Hello and welcome. My name is Zaffar Iqbal, and you are watching the Mojo story. In a monumental tragedy today, Chief of Defence Staff General Bipin Rawat and his wife were among 13 who died in a helicopter crash in Nilgiri Hills in Tamil Nadu. Now, Air Force has given out a statement and confirmed this. Group Captain Varun Singh, who was also on board, is being treated in a hospital for burn injuries. Now, we've seen a series of tweets coming from the country's top leadership, including Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who has tweeted as India's first CDS General Rawat worked on diverse aspects relating to our armed forces, including defense reforms. He brought with him a rich experience of serving in the army. India will never forget his exceptional service. Now, the Air Force has also tweeted General Bipin Rawat, Chief of Defence Staff, was on a visit to Defence Service College, Wellington, Nilgiri Hills, to address the faculty and staff officers of the staff post today. Around noon today, an IAF Me 17V5 helicopter with a crew of 4 members carrying the CDS and 9 other passengers met with a tragic accident near Kannur, Tamil Nadu. Group Captain Varun Singh, directing staff at DSSC with injuries, is currently under treatment at Military Hospital, Wellington. So clearly, it's a great tragedy that has struck the country and jolted the defense establishment. To speak on this, we're joined by an eminent panel today. We're joined by Wing Commander Amit Ranjan Giri. We are also joined by Harish Pant and Lieutenant General Arun Sahni. So, if I can start with you, Lieutenant General Arun Sahni, what are your first thoughts after this incident?
I think, firstly, at the outset, may I convey my heartfelt condolences to the family of General and Mrs. Rawat, his two daughters, and the grandson. I think it has been exceptionally tragic and shocking. Along with it, the 11 colleagues who have died, his MA and the Air Force pilots and the other staff that was traveling with him, my heartfelt condolences to the families and the children of those people who are no more with us, who have died in this very, very tragic accident. And I wish all the best to Group Captain Varun Singh and hope he comes back and recovers fast enough to be back again on his feet soon. I think undoubtedly, as you correctly said, Zafar, a tragic, uh, indeed shocking, because this happened in the heart of this country. There is regular flights which are there uh, between Sulur and Wellington. Regularly, VIPs keep going and giving talks there. I've myself been there about 3, 4 times in a chopper. Uh, so I think happening from where it happened and how it happened is indeed something which is uh, well unimaginable by all of us who have served in those areas. But again, being pragmatic and idealistic, I think undoubtedly there are terrain hazards, the hazards of climatic conditions. There could be technical snags which could have contributed to this accident. But more importantly, I think for the country and the nation, we had a very able Chief of Defense Staff, the first one to have moved into that chair, with having actually had 4 years of immense service and experience at the apex level. He was Vice Chief for nearly 1 year. He was 3 years as the Chief of Army Staff, having worked with the top leadership. And I think those relationships and bonds that get created contribute for actually tectonic and visionary shifts within the organizations. And I think he enjoyed a great rapport with the political hierarchy, with an NSA, had knew the armed forces with over 43, 44 years of service inside out, and was the right man to steer any changes that required to be done to meet the future challenges. So, as for the nation, for the armed forces itself, for the family, I think it's a great loss, and would be a certain amount of a setback as far as the current changes that are underway or were planned to be sort of taking place in the forthcoming future. A lot of discussions had happened. He had steered a tremendous amount of joint workshops, talking to the senior leadership, rationalizing and sorting out the differences between the three services so that we could come across and go ahead with the planned changes that all of us are aware of: theater commands, ensuring greater
yeah,
jointmanship, ensuring getting better bang for the buck, the Make in India initiative of his, the
yeah,
positive list that he has taken out. I think his contribution has been extremely immense, and that can only happen if you've been part of the system, understand the system, and see what is it that really are the pain points that need to be addressed. So I think undoubtedly on a personal level, he and I did a high command course many years back, and we've lived, well, we stayed in Noida together while he and I
yeah,
served abroad all over the country. He and his wife, my wife, and he and his family have been very close. So I think on
yeah.
a personal level, a great shock and a
Yeah.
great loss for all of us. Over to you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Harshpant, what does General Rawat's loss mean for India in a broader sense, given the fact that he was the first Chief of Defence Staff of the country?
Yes, I think Zafar. First of all, also let me offer my condolences because this is as you mentioned, General Sahni has mentioned, it's a great loss for a whole host of reasons. It's a loss for the family, of course, but for the nation as well. And I think the circumstances in which it has happened, it's also something to be concerned about. But I think broadly, as you point out. Uh, General Rawat's role was so unique because he was so uniquely positioned in the institutional hierarchy of the country, of the military and civilian setup. Having CDS, we have been discussing CDS for such a long time, the office of the CDS and the need for the CDS. And then finally, it gets operationalized and, General Rawat takes over. And and in the last 2 years, we have seen a series of debates and discussions and some on the ground reforms that have been generated. Uh, and for all the merits and demerits of some of his proposals, some of his ideas, I think the fact that even as army chief, he shook the army's institutional stupor into doing something more different. Whether you integrated battle groups or thinking about
Yeah,
looking at leaner and meaner force
yeah,
as Indian armed forces, and then as CDS looking at the rationalization of resources, talking about greater integration. I think that means that those reforms had become so essential for Indian armed services, for Indian armed forces, and for India's national security establishment, that only a person who had great, linkages with both the military establishment as well as the political establishment could have steered them through. So I think we have lost someone who had this unique ability to traverse that very, very tumultuous terrain. It's, you get brickbats from both sides. If you do it wrong, the military establishment is not happy on the one hand, and the army and the and the political establishment is unhappy if you do some things differently. But I think he had this great ability to synergize things and to look at the bigger picture, which I think at times is very, very important when you hold an office like the CDS. So I think his going away at this juncture, when so many efforts are underway to reform, to modernize the Indian defense establishment, is something also to be reckoned with and to feel sorry about, because
yeah.
had he continued in the office for some more time, this would have given him and the country greater opportunity to streamline some of the other efforts that are underway under his leadership.
So, do you think the process of reforms that was set in motion by General Rawat could possibly suffer some breaks now?
This is for me.
Yeah,
No, see, I don't think, I think broadly what General Rawat was offering and what the political leadership in this country had been asking for some time now. It's not simply this government or that government. I think over a period of time, there has been a consensus on a core set of reforms that are needed. And especially with China doing what it is doing, I think there is no space available for India to think back and relax. I think the need for reforms and modernization was yesterday, in fact. But and we have moved quite significantly on that in that direction. So I don't think think that eventually it will suffer a setback. But whenever you have the top leadership gone at a critical juncture, when you are in the process of doing these kind of significant reforms, it does lead to a setback. It may be temporary, but it is an important setback, because
Yeah.
for a leadership to envision and to operate in this kind of a milieu where you can integrate the political and the military establishments, and you can look at the bigger picture, is something that not all leaders have. And frankly, that was his ability that made him do certain kinds of things which with other people on board perhaps would have looked more difficult. So I think that is something that we need to look at, that who comes next, and how he or she carries forward the legacy.
Yes, of course. Wing Commander Amit Ranjan Giri, you are yourself a former IAF pilot. What are your first thoughts when you heard about this horrific incident in the morning?
Well, first of all, it's rather difficult to believe. Chopper crashes, you keep hearing about them. Fighter crashes, you keep hearing. But then suddenly, such a jolt comes out of the blue. General Bipin Rawat, the man who was on the way to transform the Indian armed forces, like the general just covered, he is the one who's no more, and that hits you with a big jolt. As to why the crash happened, as to what went wrong and all, I'm very sure the AAIB team, that's the Accident Investigation and Aircraft Accident Investigation Board, will come out with a report very soon, initial report, and we can then debate about it. But certainly a very, very tragic incident. My condolences to everyone down the line, and I hope, and keeping my fingers crossed for Group Captain Arun Singh. I just hope he recovers. He is right now battling for his life in the hospital. And like they say, it could be weather, it could be birds, it could be any inclement stuff, something that has gone wrong.
Yes, from the visuals, we saw that the helicopter has possibly collided on those big trees, and then it has caught fire. Though that one could infer from those visuals.
Yeah, exactly what has happened. Why has it collided in controlled flight, or has it collided after something has gone wrong and you are not being able to control the flight? Those are things which will come out only after the initial analysis of the data recorder. And in any case, helicopter carrying a dignitary like General Rawat would have gone through every spick and span spotlessly, not only clean, every check down on the book, every box check marked before it's done, with a standby helicopter available in case anything seems to have gone wrong. So right now it's too early to comment as to what or how it has happened. Yes, it's
Yeah. Yes, obviously, but General Rawat had a long tenure in the army. Speaking something about him, he was commissioned on 16 December 1978 into the 5th Battalion of the 11th Gorkha Rifles of the Infantry. You can see there's a meeting also going on, top leadership of the country sitting and discussing the matter about General Rawat. He commanded an infantry battalion along the line of actual control and a Rashtra Rifle sector in Kashmir. The general was the chief of the army staff from 31st December 2016 to 31st December 2019. General Bipin Rawat was appointed India's first chief of defense staff on 31st December 2019. So you saw from those visuals there was a cabinet committee of security that was called today, top leadership of the country, and also the NSA in that meeting. Now this incident has taken place. Obviously, an inquiry has been ordered that was announced earlier in the day by the Indian Air Force. But I want to ask General Arun Sahni, do you think that there would be some change in the SOP after this incident, this accident that took place today?
But I think, can you hear me? It would
Yes.
be pure conjecture to say that the SOPs weren't followed, because I totally agree with what the group captain has said. I don't think processes and procedures which are involved with moving of VVIP dignitaries would have been violated. I think they would have been done with great amount of precision and great amount of concern by all concerned. So I think the reason why it could have happened, as I said, I'd also mentioned there could be quite a few reasons that could have led to the crash. But I think what is more apparent is that the crash has happened, and we have lost a very, very important uh, a person who was involved at the senior hierarchy of the national security structure of our country. That's what has happened to us. We've had loss of, I mean, a tragic loss of lives, which has been absolutely, I think all of us are dumbfounded by an accident of this kind and the kind of magnitude of the loss that has happened of human value and human life. But I think the bigger picture that really needs to be looked at is, which I presume is what is the CCS is presently grappling with, is who gets appointed as the next
Yeah,
chief of defense staff. What would be the role? And may I just add something to what Mr. Pant had added? Organizations are far bigger than individuals, but individuals matter to make things happen.
yeah,
So there
yeah,
would be a certain amount of what do I say? There would be a certain amount of a delay in some of the actions that had been contemplated, which were in the process, because whoever comes into the chair brings in a new
yeah,
has a new vision, has a new idea, would also be able to put in and add value to it. So I'm sure we would see a certain amount of delay in the execution of these uh, laudatory changes that we were looking at. But undoubtedly, the change would continue and will happen in due course of time. As it stands, uh, the chief of army staff is the senior most serving among the three chiefs, and going by the fact that as of now they've not really looked at the American armed forces, where you suddenly look at Colin Powell came back after retirement to take over as the CDS. I think India, it is too nascent. The appointment of this gentleman, our structures within the bureaucracy may not accept certain tectonic changes. So I presume it would be one of the senior most serving chiefs who would move
yeah,
into the seat of the vacated, now unfortunate vacation of the seat of the CDS. And we would see a transition in the senior apex leadership of that organization as well as at the CDS. So what I can only say is there would be delay. There would be, I would say, the actions will continue to sort of culminate in what is desired for the betterment of the national security and the organization structures. As you can see, and by the pictures that you're showing me, there is a certain amount of everybody is sort of still grappling with the loss of what has happened.
yeah.
But the changes will happen. The army will continue, or the armed forces will continue to march towards it. One more thing which I must say is, uh, whoever moves in, fortunately, the present chief of army staff has also been in position now for nearly over 2 years. So there is a certain amount of rapport, understanding with the political and the bureaucratic hierarchy of the country. So changes will take place
Yeah.
slowly, but will happen.
Also, husband at the operational level, do you think this will impact? Because there is still a standoff in places in Ladakh with the Chinese, and that's continuing for many months now. Do you think such a sort of a tragedy could really impact the situation on the ground in some ways, or it won't make any effect because our armies are foreign institution?
I don't think operationally it would really make a difference in the sense that what we are facing, we have been facing for now 2 years, almost 2 years, 1.5 years along the border, and the situation, the army as an institution, the defense forces as an institution are prepared to take that eventuality head on, irrespective of the top level leadership. So I think that in a day-to-day operational sense, it may not matter. But I think what General Rawat was trying to do, or what his reforms were trying to do, was to create a defense machinery, and that was more effective in dealing with some of the challenges that we are facing. And I think that's where the point that General Sahni was making becomes relevant, because the leadership, that continuation of that leadership would have really mattered at this stage, that making taking those initiatives to their logical conclusion, and those decisions that have been taken to follow through them to the last to the last resort. I think that would have created that would have led to a more timely response mechanisms. Now that he's not there, there would be some delay given the challenges. But I think as an organization, Indian Armed Forces are always prepared to take on the challenges that are on the borders. I have no doubt about it.
Wing Commander Amit, Ranjan, Giri, now that the Indian Air Force has ordered an inquiry, the inquiry will take some time. It will complete and then give its report. But what is the mechanism of this inquiry? Since you are yourself served in the Indian Air Force, what is the mechanism and how long could it possibly take to reach to some conclusion?
Okay, see, what happens is once such a inclement situation occurs, accident occurs, and an inquiry is ordered, the first people to reach there is the Aircraft Accident Investigation Board. They're from the headquarters, from the Directorate of Air Safety. They are the experts in investigating aircraft accidents. They reach the place, they dig out, they come up with an initial report as to which direction should it proceed. And once that comes up, by this time, the Air Force is gathering up the team for court of inquiry, which would have already reached by now, since it's about 12 hours, maybe another 6-7 hours, the court of inquiry team would have also been constituted and reached. They would have taken all the evidences under them, gone. Now starts the entire thing of going through, right from forensic down to checking the history of the aeroplane to whether everything. They strip apart the entire thing and thereafter reach a decision. Now, this at times, the final report of the court of inquiry at time takes a little time, depending on where all the machinery is going. See, there are times when you want to download the flight data recorder or the CVR. There are times when it can be done in India. There are times it has to be sent abroad. Actually, as for the V5, what's in the process right now, I'm not aware. But most probably it should be done in India. And once that's done, then you start analyzing the entire thing and reach a conclusion as to why the thing has happened. The last step, of course, is to stop it from happening. So after you have nailed it is when you put in place your checks and procedures to stop it from happening. In fact, you put in checks and procedures right from the initial report that the AAIB team gives, and then you make it more strong and solid as you progress with the court of inquiry.
Well, one hopes that the inquiry is completed soon and lessons are taken from this accident to prevent such sort of accidents and incidents from taking place in the future. Remember, this is not the first time that a crash has taken place. There have been many crashes in the past. One would hope that lessons are learned and measures are put in place to prevent such sort of incidents from taking place in the future. Thanks to our panel for joining us today on this tragic news of the helicopter crash of the first Chief of Defence Staff of India, General Bipin Rawat. Thanks so much for watching.
Thank you, Zaffar.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.